You may or may not know that part of the training to become an Episcopal priest is clinical pastoral education, which is an experiential learning program that teaches pastoral and spiritual care. It can take many forms, but the most common is spending a summer working full-time as a hospital chaplain. This was my summer last year. At New York Presbyterian Weill Cornell, I served in the Neonatal Intensive Care Unit, or NICU. Anytime I told someone where I was assigned, there was almost an identical reaction. First delight, maybe even envy that I got to spend 3 months working with babies, followed very quickly by the sober realization of what the NICU entailed. Sick babies, hooked up to frightening machines, a liminal space where time slowed or stopped, where life and death, possibility and unimaginable loss circled the air like moons of a strange planet. I have no idea why I was assigned to the NICU. I had no real experience working with infants. I certainly didn't express it as my preference. But I'm so grateful. I've never felt God more consistently present, ever. I think it's because the world was stripped down to what really mattered. We were all there, the parents, the chaplains, the nurses and doctors and social workers, because we were committed to love and hope. I marveled at how these little babies were so loved simply because they existed. It didn't matter who they were or what they could do. I wouldn't even say there were good days or bad days in the NICU, at least not for a chaplain. There were moments when I was so happy that I cried, and there were moments when I was so constricted by grief that I couldn't move or do anything at all. But underneath everything was the unwavering conviction that we were doing something real. Not even something that mattered necessarily, although that was true too, but something real. Life in the NICU cut through all the inventions and pretensions, all the comfort and complacency. It was jarring and refreshing, like jumping into a cold pool. I felt so human and so close to God. This is what I thought of and what I couldn't shake when I was sitting with this week's gospel reading. Today's gospel passage is the first time in Mark that we hear Jesus called the Christ, also translated as the Messiah, meaning the anointed one. Jesus is the human one and the anointed one. And what is Jesus anointed for? Well, not the glorious freedom fighting and military victory that his disciples were expecting from the prophecies. Instead, Jesus tells his disciples that he's going to die. He's going to die and rise again. And he adds, all who want to come after me must say no to themselves, take up their cross, and follow me. It's a hard teaching, and it's a hard text to preach for Homecoming Sunday. I guess our lectionary didn't get the memo that this was supposed to be a party. But as I prepared for today and for this sermon and thought about how excited I was to see all of you and to welcome back Ken and John and to have a big, beautiful barbecue, I also thought about how hard this year has been for so many of us. I haven't heard all your stories, but I've heard enough to know that 2024 has not been an easy road. Just in this room, there has been so much loss, illness, disappointment. We experience tragedies of violence in our backyards and around the world. And I don't know about you, but I can't just put on my church hat or my party hat and forget the rest of it. Everything feels so present for me right now. I felt a keen tenderness moving through life, like new skin over a scrape. This is not the gospel I would have chosen for Homecoming Sunday. But I wonder if it's the gospel we need to hear. I wonder if this good news, kicking off our program year, is the radical instruction that we need to slow down. In the words of Báyò Akómoláfé, slowing down is thus about lingering in the places we are not used to, seeking out new questions, becoming accountable to more than what rests on the surface, seeking roots. Slowing down is taking care of ghosts, hugging monsters, sharing silence, embracing the weird. Jesus says, if you are my disciples, follow me into the frightening unknown. Together. Come on. Jesus is the human one and the anointed one. He is human and divine. He is crucified and risen. He is collapsing binaries, uniting the alienated parts of ourselves and our world, and inviting us into wholeness. Jesus says, all who want to come after me, be real. Get your hands around the crucified realities of our world. Feel the roughness of the grain and the weight of the wood. Get into it. Among the many worthy interpretations of this verse, taking up your cross is, in one sense, a commitment to shouldering the hard stuff. It's a willingness to stay engaged with life as it is, including what is painful, unjust, unfair, shocking, or frightening. And really, what is life worth living if we're constantly ducking and dodging in order to maintain some tenuous balance? That's not real. That's not any life at all. What I learned in the NICU and what many of us learn in other areas of our lives is that there isn't always an answer. In fact, there's very rarely an answer. We're lucky if there's an answer. Most of what we can do, most of the time, is stay in it with each other. That goes a really long way. Being willing to sit with someone, to sit with yourself in a time of suffering goes a really long way. Our task is to get out of ourselves, to say no to ourselves, enough that we can break through to the radical love of Christ, a love that is anointed for all, a love with no stipulations. If you're able to do this, you'll notice cracks start to form in all those knee-jerk impulses and self-defenses. You'll very quickly get to the core of what matters. In a glorious paradox, you'll find a new appreciation for life through the pain, new capacity for joy, and an integrated internal experience that is open to all, that receives all. When I served as a chaplain, I imagined my heart cradled in the hands of Christ, so that whatever I received, whatever I was witness to, passed through me and rested in the hands of the one who came among us for love of us, the human one, the anointed one. That's the promise on the other side of this hard teaching. That's the good news. If we slow down, if we take care of ghosts, hug monsters, and share silence, we get our lives. If we give up our need to control, to be right, to be comfortable, we get our lives. During the blessing of the backpacks today, the children and youth will receive labyrinth keychains, signs that wherever our winding paths lead us, We are held in a sacred wholeness. By taking up our cross, we get something real. We get something whole. We get lives in all their complexity. When we take up our cross, we're saying on a brave exhale, I know this is part of life too. I know life is full of beauty and extravagant joy. And I know there is suffering and injustice. I know. And I'm here for all of it. I'm staying in it with you and with Jesus for all of it. As Christians, we travel the way of love and we travel the way of the cross. The cross is a bridge between humanity and the divine, so that nothing can separate us from the love of God, not empire, not death, not anything. When we follow in the steps of Jesus and take up our cross, we affirm that we will be that bridge to each other. Christian, after all, means little Christ. We are all little Christs to each other, sharing in each other's joys and in the worst moments of our lives, acting as that bridge back to God, saying with our own hands of love, God did not forget you. So this is my prayer for our church this next year. I pray that we slow down. I pray that we take up our cross so that we are bridges to divine love. I pray that we live our whole lives together, all of it. I pray that when people walk in those doors, whether on a Sunday morning, Wednesday, at an outreach committee event for the LGBTQ action group, anytime someone walks in those doors, they feel such a freedom, such a conviction, such a clear-eyed willingness to embrace life for all that it is, that they know Christ dwells here among us. May it be so. Amen.